Well, look, everybody, welcome back to the Trick Podcast. Joey on this beautiful Monday night. It is almost 10 p.m., 10:08 p.m. here on this beautiful night. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to this episode talking about what about single moms with multiple baby daddies? What should the church do as a friend? Maybe you yourself have been through this reality. You are a church leader. You are a young person yourself. You are that single mom, or maybe it's someone that you know. Talking about the real stuff here from a biblical perspective. What do we do as the church, as people, as humans, to really bring about a revolution of the soul? The reality is that we have a crisis when it comes to intersexual relationships in the church, in society, everywhere we go. And men are at fault, women are at fault. We as the church don't always know what to do. We as humans want to do the right thing before God. And yet there are so many things that are, so many mistakes that we as humans make. And then you have either a very, I guess you could call it a church that lets everything go, or you have churches that are so, maybe so tough that people don't feel that there's hope. And so it's a big deal because obviously intersexual dynamics and single moms, baby daddies, exes, and all these things is a reality of the gospel. Jesus came for the prostitute. Jesus came for men who created a mess, who were unfaithful. In the news, you see all kinds of bad examples. You hear about, you could say Nicki Minaj or Cardi B, all of these rappers, Drake, and every rapper out there is only encouraging promiscuity and a lack of self-discipline. The Bible calls us to be disciplined, to have self-control. But then because of the media, because of music, because of our own sinful behavior, as the Bible says, because of the flesh, or the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the love of, what is the last one I think is, because there's the love of power, I believe it says, we continue to fall into these traps. And then we as families, or we as that single mom, we then have to figure life out, and we feel shame, we feel embarrassed, or maybe, as I said, we look for help, but churches don't always know what to do, or they are too lenient or too strict. My opinion is that we have to have a balance of calling out things that are destructive. In my 30 years of pastoring, I have counseled many single moms with multiple baby daddies. And I think that what happens a lot of times is that you have compassion that leads us, which I think always should lead, right? You always need to have compassion. But I think that one of the things that I've noticed is that there is no accountability for the men. Nobody knows who these men are. They are most of the time not from the church, or maybe the young woman leaves the church and comes back pregnant. And of course she feels maybe embarrassed, she feels bad, and she needs support. Maybe her parents aren't supportive, or maybe they've been through this so many times. They need love. And so the church, which is supposed to be a place of compassion, we offer compassion, but then this happens again. And it happens over and over again, 2, 3, 4 times, where maybe this young lady continues to make the same mistake, have the same kind of men that pursue her, different men, but with a bad intention. And so the men have no accountability. They have no relationship with a pastor, certainly they're not intending on marrying this young lady. And so the young lady now has these 3, 4, 5 babies from different men. And now, as I said, the parents, the family, that woman herself, most of all, is having to deal with all kinds of trauma and pain and all kinds of problems. And then we don't always know what to do. And so I think that we have to find better ways to address these issues that are so important. I know I don't have the answers. I don't have a crystal ball to say, hey, here's what we should do. But I think that we need to be discussing these issues because people need help. And I don't think it's enough to just simply say, well, that's just how life is. Well, that's just kind of what happens. Or, well, let's just ignore it, or let's just do what we can. obviously we always want to do what we can, and we always need to show compassion, but is there accountability that the young man, the young woman need to take? What does that look like? Most of the time, as I said, in my 30 years of ministry, full-time ministry in the church, what I've noticed is that there's a lot of shame, a lot of hiding that happens. And so young women who come back with another baby and another baby from different men, as I mentioned, they often come back with a real need for love and support, but not a lot of wisdom is given to them. Not even, let's just say, maybe a class where they can confess, where they can, and I don't mean like shame, I just mean where they can deal with whatever's happening behind the scenes. Maybe they were abused as a child, maybe their daddies weren't there, maybe they have psychological or financial problems. At the end of the day, though, you have to have accountability, because it is a choice that we as humans make to be available as a woman, to keep choosing the wrong men. And especially if these men aren't from the church, or maybe they are from the church. Sometimes these issues happen right in front of us with young men and women who we know, who are leaders of the church, who are singing in the band, who help with the offering and whatever. And so now you have a whole community that has no direction. I feel like we have to have a balanced approach where there is some sense of a path back to I guess you could say back to holiness, back to health, back to self-respect and self-love and grace. And also, that also includes some sort of training, counseling, a truly helping the person, as I said, especially the young lady, being that she's the one now with this baby, to address some of the trauma, some of the bad choices, some of the financial issues, whatever's going on behind the scenes. No woman wants to be in this situation. I mean, who wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to have another baby with another man who doesn't help me, who doesn't love me, who hates my kids from other men, and now I have this one guy in Mexico, this one guy here in the area, and another guy out of state. No one wakes up obviously wanting their lives to be a mess. And so how do we then come to a place where we're helping people without allowing it all and just kind of turning a blind eye, but at the same time being there for people? And let me see if this music is too loud, by the way. I think it is a bit loud. Turn it down. I think that's a little better. And so you have, I think, as I said, you have to have a more varied, a more wholesome, not varied, a more wholesome and holistic approach. You can't just be Bible verses and you're undisciplined for 3 years. When I grew up, church that I went to when I was a young man, I was maybe 9 or 10, so I saw, without maybe a lot of awareness, young couples, or maybe just young people in general, that would suddenly leave the church or were kicked out of the church because they had gone through some problem, right? They were on church discipline. But I know what I'm talking about. And as an adult, and even now talking to some of these now people in their 40s and 50s, it often resulted in a ton of pain and making things worse because it was just punitive. It was all about condemning and kind of giving the person a scarlet letter, saying you've ruined your life, you've ruined the life of maybe another woman, maybe this man was married, you've ruined this marriage. And so there's a lot of shame that the young woman deals with, and the young man, we don't even know who he is. Now, if he was a church member, then you have the same thing, right? You have this shaming and you have this condemning of what happens to, or condemning of what the young man did. If he did get the girl pregnant, if maybe he now has to leave the church for 6 months to a year. And even in that time when they are quoting church discipline, what I have found is that there isn't really any therapy that takes place. There isn't, as I said, any understanding of the person's trauma, of the person's sexual history, of the person's sexual trauma themselves, what they've been through. Now, I'm not saying that there is no accountability. It is a personal choice that we each make to sleep with a woman that isn't our wife, to get someone to have sex outside of marriage, all of the things that obviously the Bible teaches that we know are to be true, and yet we have these problems and we don't know what to do. And a lot of times when I've counseled dozens of couples that have been in my office, that I've talked to personally, that have sought me out, there's always a story behind it, always trauma, always a painful and very real need that these young people have. Now, mostly the people that I've spoken to are the young women, because the young women are the ones that normally stay in the church, or because of the baby plus the compassion element of a church and a lot of women and a lot of just mothering that happens, which should happen in the church. Then the young ladies tend to feel accepted at church. The men, though, tend to be ostracized, and normally they tend to be, basically, they become anonymous. Nobody even knows who they are. Now, sometimes you could say that the men are, quote, trash, right? And the women are 304s. I'm not going to say the word, right? So sometimes you have all of this language that takes place where it's easy to just label people. Now, there could be truth to these things. I mean, there are people that, because of many reasons, mostly, as I said, emotional trauma, they go down the wrong path. But I believe in giving people a 10th and 50th and 100th chance. But you have to have a holistic way to help people come back to health and to be able to perhaps not marry this man, perhaps this man who got this girl pregnant, maybe he doesn't want to be in the relationship anymore. Perhaps he doesn't have a job. Perhaps he himself is dealing with trauma. Maybe he has 2 or 3 other girls that he's got pregnant, and so this is just part of his MO. I think that we always have to go underneath the surface. The gospel of Jesus Christ isn't about just condemning people, nor is it about excusing behavior. It always should be about a holistic approach to helping the person back to biblical deliverance and spiritual healing in Jesus' name. And that is more than just worship services and preaching. I love both. I do both. I'm a professional, quote unquote, meaning I've given my life to this. But I have seen, as I said, that more needs to be done. And it's not just in this area, but we're talking about single moms and baby daddies. There has to be a more leveled and comprehensive and yes, a more logical approach to helping a young man who keeps getting girls pregnant, to have him understand maybe his sexual behavior, maybe his trauma when he was a young man, where he saw promiscuity in his home from his dad, where he maybe was exposed to pornography or to sexual behavior when he was underage, where he just couldn't even process what was going on. Same thing for young ladies. And to actually address those issues and themes, and to have people that actually are professionals, that are equipped to help young people without shame, without judgment, at the same time without just simply letting it go and just sweeping it under the rug. Because then what I've noticed is that the same mistake keeps happening over and over again. Or if you don't have a really balanced approach, you have then what I call spiritual bypassing, where young people now are trying to make up for their sin for the rest of their lives. And they never feel like they're good enough again. They want to be spiritual virgins, but it's never enough. They want to be spiritual leaders, but it's never enough. They don't even know when exactly am I going to be restored back to health. You look at Jesus and the Samaritan woman, right? You could say that she had baby daddies, right? We don't know if she was pregnant from any men. Apparently not. We don't know. But definitely she had been with many men. And so you could say that she had made many baby daddies, or at least she was a promiscuous woman, right? Now, Jesus, in that, let's say, hour, healed her spiritually, healed her mentally. He appealed to her mind, to her spirit, and even to her religion. Because a lot of times, people's religion can get in the way or can really harm their own sense of guilt. How many Catholic young girls leave the church when they see a man they like, or maybe when they do sleep with a man, they have sex, and they feel like they're going to hell, because that's the message they heard from well-meaning pastors and well-meaning churches. And yet in that chapter, in John chapter 4, Jesus heals this woman in every area of her life, physically, spiritually. At the end, after he forgives her, note that, after he forgives her, he says, go and sin no more. He doesn't say, hey, let me know when you have the next guy, when you bag the next man, if your body count goes up, to another 5 or 10 or 50 men. Now, we don't always know. We don't know in that passage, and this is maybe something I wish we knew, what happened to these men. Sometimes we know that the women perhaps are struggling, or the women are the ones that maybe are looking for help, but what happened to the men that she married or that she was sleeping with in John 4? And when I see these things happen in my office, when young men, normally young women, come into my office in tears, broken up, needing diapers, needing money, needing a place to live, hoping to not be suicidal and completely just ruin their lives, I often wonder, where's the guy? Guys deal with huge levels of shame. I do. We all do. Whether it's 1 to 10, wherever on the scale we may be in terms of our own intersexual dynamics and sexual unhealth or health. Imagine a young man who did get the girl pregnant, or maybe he's now the second or third or fourth guy. Maybe he even knows these other guys, maybe not. And now he's living with this constant guilt, or he goes into drugs, into alcohol to mask the shame. And all he wants is a father figure that he never had, to guide him, to stop lacking self-discipline. Every young man thrives when there is self-discipline, when he learns and he knows how to manage his body. Imagine if we had classes on this, intersexual relationship classes, for 12 months, not just 12 minutes. It would revolutionize our churches. It would heal so many people before they make the mistake, during, after. I mean, you would have all kinds of young kids that are dating, that are checking things out, that are dealing with pornographic addiction at 12, at 13, young men or young women. I've had many parents, when I was pastoring a church, come to me and say, my 10-year-old daughter is dealing with pornography. Would you preach on this? Would you counsel my daughter? And it was always very awkward for me. So I always had my family's pastor, or a woman, or my wife talk to these young ladies. But we're talking about something that parents want help with, and perhaps young people, well, I'm not going to say perhaps, young people also want help. They want guidance, they want mentors. And I think that we need to have these podcasts and all these shows. I mean, the world's doing it. Fresh and Fit, Andrew Tate, a million other Pearly Things, a million of things that I have been noticing that are growing in popularity online, because they are addressing, ironically, from a more conservative, I'm not talking about politics, but from a more traditional, maybe is a better word, view of marriage. They're growing like weeds, because young people, who are often the ones that are watching these shows, are in such desperate need of guidance. And the people that are on these shows are often 23-year-olds, 25-year-olds. They themselves often will say, I don't know what I'm doing. And then you have maybe young pastors or young leaders who also haven't dealt with this. And then us men who are older, we don't talk about these things, or maybe we're still dealing with the same problems that our kids dealt with, and we don't know even ourselves how to have discipline, how to have the fruits of the Spirit of joy and peace, self-discipline. But I think that we have to stop that, and we have to begin to have better conversations around this topic, so that we can actually help people and begin to find answers through panels, through conversations, with biblical knowledge, with as I said, psychological tools, intersexual dynamics, evolutionary psychology, with the Bible most of all. The Bible, as I have studied all of those things, is where the answers are. But I think that sometimes the church and our church leaders, I've been a senior pastor for many years, we don't always know how to help people holistically. Maybe we have some sort of recovery group or recovery program, but even then, sometimes the therapeutic or counseling, or the cognitive therapy, CBT, they call it cognitive behavioral therapy, is missing, because a lot of times people don't believe in that. Churches don't think that that's important. And so we have then a young lady, I remember one case, maybe, 9-10 years ago, that came to me broken because she got pregnant by guy X at her job. And so we as a church, I was a young pastor, we helped her. I didn't know exactly what to say as far as the behavior. We knew to show compassion and buy her diapers and get her all kinds of food and love her, of course. But I didn't know what to do. Then boom, 2 years later, and this is, I don't even know how many men she was sleeping with in between babies. This is just the babies or the results of the men that got her pregnant. And as I said, I don't even know what the men were dealing with. But the second time, okay, I said, okay, we can't just keep doing this. And so I did sit down with her. I never knew who the guy was. He wasn't from the church. And all this pain came out. And she did really well for, I would say, another 3, 4, 5 years. We stopped counseling, and then she did it happen again. 3rd and 4th times. 4 men, 4 kids. And I only have compassion, but I also think, you know what to do. You know where this comes from. You know what's happening. It's like someone who overeats or smokes or drinks or gambles. These habitual patterns, they can be broken through prayer, through worship, biblical deliverance, spiritual healing, but also through conversation and behavioral therapy, where you're sharing with somebody else tools. I see it just like trying to lose weight. Imagine someone who's trying to lose weight, who keeps overeating, who keeps not exercising, but goes to church and prays. You can't. It just would be illogical. These behaviors of sexuality, because they are addressed in the church, and it's talked about a lot, because this has been a problem for thousands and thousands of millions of years. We often don't have the language, the vernacular, or the training, or even the leaders, or the resources, unless it's the government, and we know what that is all about, to actually talk to people with their minds. Spirit and truth. That's what Jesus told the Samaritan woman, right? Spirit and truth. At the end of that passage in John 4, he says to her, go and sin no more. But he had given her the tools on how not to sin no more. Now, what I was saying is that I am bummed that there's no narrative about the men. Imagine if these men had sought out Jesus. Imagine, my goodness, I'm not saying anything blasphemous here. If one of the men had been a disciple, what if it had been Matthew? Wouldn't it be amazing if we could hear what Jesus told Matthew? Or if it was just, quote, tax collector A? What if he was a religious leader, like it happens these days, right? What did Jesus say to these men? Because the men obviously are at fault here. I mean, it takes 2 to tango, right? We know that this is obviously, we know how life works, right? I mean, we know how babies are born. And so what about the men? What healing can the church offer to men, being that a lot of our churches are filled with mostly young women? Because, as I said, there's a lot of compassion for women, but men who are more logical and who want it more straight and want tools, want to do something, a lot of times they don't find that the church has any real to-dos or tasks or knowledge to give to them, except give, serve, do things in the church, but no real knowledge. Men love knowledge because we want to improve ourselves. That's why men are the ones who often listen to podcasts and build things and study. And I mean, I'm not saying women don't. My point is that men, we need knowledge. Knowledge, like Ty said, right? Ty Lopez. We need to understand how life works. We're more mechanical. Some people say that men build and women nurture. I'm not saying that it's not both and. But my point is that men often, I'm not saying that men don't have emotions or men don't need worship and love, of course. But you know what I'm saying, right? That if we knew what Jesus had told the Samaritan woman's baby daddies, it would be amazing, right? To know. Now, are there any examples in the Bible of what Jesus did say to the men? We know what he told David, right? When David sinned, there was a process there from God, the Father of, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It wasn't Jesus per se, but it was the Father, right? It was God the Father. It was Jehovah who helped David, and we know that he used the prophets, right? Samuel, and then he used his sons to punish him. I mean, there was a lot of punishment in the Old Testament, and yet in the New Testament, obviously we're under grace, a different era, a different season. But at the same time, we have to still have a process, not of condemning people. Jesus came to save, not to condemn the world, John 3:17. But at the same time, we have to help people. And sometimes I think we have to have people be accountable. I said, I'm not talking about exorcising demons. Unless maybe that is part of it is demonic. I'm not talking about kicking people to the curb. I'm talking about actually having a process that helps people. This is a different dispensation was the word I was thinking of. We're under grace now, not under the law. But I think that sometimes those rules of the law should apply to us today, or at least we should look at them. Don't commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not take another woman's another man's wife. Honor your father and mother. Obviously, these commandments are very important for us to consider, to still abide by, not necessarily as a way of salvation, but as a way to live life happily. So that if you have a woman that is not your wife and you get her pregnant, that there is a path to healing and to deliverance and to restoration that isn't just all condemnation and fire and brimstone, but isn't just enabling the next and the next mistake. As I said in John 4, Jesus was very clear. He said, go and sin no more. But he gave the woman tools, appealed to her mind, appealed to her own pain. He said, where is your husband? She said, I have no husband. And the man that I'm with is not my husband either. I have many men. So Jesus appealed to what was happening behind the scenes. As I've said in my many years of counseling and of coaching and of pastoring, that's where I have seen true deliverance. And yet I think part of the frustration that all of us have, I know for me as a pastor, is to see people make the same mistakes over and over again because of unhealed trauma, unhealed sinful behavior, unhealed lies that they tell themselves, unhealed pain, emotional pain, generational sin, all of these things that we're all aware of. And they go to the altar, they pray every day, maybe they're serving, they're giving, they're doing all these things, they're leaders in the church, and then they're gone. And we don't even know the story because maybe we hide these things from the church. I mean, the church I grew up in often hid these things from the church. We only heard rumors, right? Kind of like a novela. Oh yeah, he slept with who, and we all knew they were shacking up, right? And no one really knows the end of the story or the process except shame and just throwing the person out, or the famous church discipline, but no real okay, what are they learning? Because guess what? Someone else in your family could deal with the same thing. Your friend, you yourself. It may happen to you. It may happen to someone you love. Wouldn't it be good to have classes on this? I'm not saying to have people's laundry be on some blog or on some podcast. Obviously, that would be ridiculous. But wouldn't it be good to know what exactly helped that person? Or even just simply keeping it more general to say, hey, here are some things that the Bible teaches, but also we know from human behavior, from intersexual dynamics, why there are people that are addicted to sex, why there are some women that are addicted to promiscuity, or where that comes from, why they have so many men that they sleep with, why are they quote 304s, and why are the men trash, or they're cheaters, or once a cheater, always a cheater. How do you change that apart from just feeling guilt and shame and now going on this 3-year excursion to hopefully just hold it together until the next thing, right? And just hope that you die without screwing up again. How do you actually grow? Where do you actually converse with other men, older, your age, younger, as far as mentoring them, obviously all age appropriate, where you can process this stuff together? AA has it. Why don't we have, I don't mean sex addiction groups. I just mean intersexuality classes where we can learn before or even during, quote, we make the mistake, what to do. And obviously you have to have privacy. You have to have confidentiality, obviously, right? We're talking about intersexual stuff that's very confidential, very painful, very personal. But wouldn't it be great to just simply have, like we have discipleship classes, have parenting classes? I don't mean how to parent, just okay, timeouts versus spanking. I mean what's going on inside of the man, that he wants multiple partners. How do you deal with that? That a woman wants a man with money and that's 6'2", or that has a good paying job, and yet all the men in the church are all short and broke and not that good looking. And so the men feel like, man, I have no chance here. How do we teach our young men to have jobs, to have skills, to create businesses, to buy a nice watch, to buy a car, to have a job that pays them well, to have, yes, a car and a nice a nice shirt so that they can attract a kingdom woman. The things that women truly are noticing, on top of, are they men of God? Of course. I'm not saying it's only, hey, does he have a nice car? But it's not just as you go to church. Otherwise, we'd have a bunch of weddings going on and a bunch of men getting married in churches. And yet I only see mostly women in churches, or men who are doing their best, and yet they can't seem to get ahead. We have to help young men to get ahead in the things that are real in life. How to get a job, how to make money, how to be fit, how to have your own car, your own job, how to have dignity, and yes, how to have a vital relationship with Jesus. But it's all of those things that a woman's looking for. It's not just you go to church. If not, as I said, we would have a lot of happy men in churches instead of a lot of broken men that we have in churches, or simply no men in churches. A lot of churches that I grew up in have no men, mostly women, mostly single women that are trying to find the right man, and yet those men are not there. Or if they are, a lot of times they're cheating, or they're the ones that are more promiscuous than the ones outside the church. These are the things that I have noticed in 30 years. We have to give people tools, hope, guidance, real life conversations, mentoring. Why is it only Fresh and Fit? Why is it only Andrew Tate and whoever else is out there? Millions of young people. Why don't we create, and this is what I intend to do, is to create podcasts and conversations where we talk about not just a Bible study. Okay, I love Bible studies. I love all of that. But we're talking about intersectional dynamics, fitness, money, work, and for the women, same things. Topics of self-esteem, of having security, of being pure, virgins, men too. Imagine if we talked about the value of being a virgin in church. We would probably get kicked out of the church, right? If we even brought that word up. And yet these are the things that women value, right? Men don't want a woman who's been around the block, right? Who's been run through, excuse me for saying these things, but these are the things that this is how people talk, right? And a woman doesn't want a man who's broke, doesn't have a job, doesn't have a car, lives at home. Because what? She is thinking, is this man going to take care of me and my babies? Heck no, right? So that man has no chance, even though he goes to church and does all the right things, to find that woman of his dreams, because that's not what women are looking for. They are looking for a spiritual man. I'm not the only example, but I've asked my wife, why did you fall in love with me? She's like, your voice. But guess what? I was working. I had a car. I dressed nice. I came from a good family. She met my grandma. She could see that I respected my grandma. I still live at home, but I was already paying rent. I had a job. I actually worked at the church. I was a pastor at the church. I wasn't a full-time pastor yet. I was only 23. She was 21. But when she, quote, heard me sing, there was more to it for this beautiful, if you've met my wife, amazing top woman who said, that's my man, even though she had many other options. I don't know about many. My point is that she could have, I'm sure, have men who were looking at her and saying, ooh, that's an amazing woman. It can't just be that I was just singing for God. It wasn't just, oh, he's got a great voice and he sings to Jesus. And I hate my grandma. I'm disrespectful to her. I'm broke. I am not even groomed. I don't dress nice. I don't have any career goals. I have no aspirations for a career. I was maybe a year from graduating as a double major in computer science and engineering, even though I was undocumented. I was an immigrant from Nicaragua. People didn't even know how to say Nicaragua, much less my last name. This is back in the 80s and 90s when there were no interracial relationships. People are like, what are you doing with that white woman in there? What are you doing with that black man? And yet, because of a lot of factors, including a lot of mistakes, including the grace of God, including the tough parenting of my grandmother and the love and the letters from my mom and dad who live far away. Oh, well, lucky you, Trig. You had a mom and dad. Again, I had all kinds of problems. But I did have, yes, parents that guided me. And that's what Rochelle saw. And I saw, well, it'd be obvious if you've met my wife. All that you see in her, imagine at 23. No, at 21 I met her. I married her at 23. Let's go back to the good old days. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying we have to, in the vacuum and in the absence of parenting, of mentors, of the church talking about these things, and in the advent of so much TikTok and Instagram Reels and Instagram models and basically OnlyFans, that every woman's account is basically on OnlyFans these days. Shout out to all the women that don't take off their clothes on Instagram, but all the other 90%, 99% of accounts, in the advent, meaning in the presence of these things, we're losing the battle, guys. We're losing the war, because it's just, we're largely absent and silent in this conversation regarding intersexual dynamics, the fresh and fit Andrew Tate phenomena, and just simply what we see in human behavior, the pain that we carry. Well, that's what we preach, Trig. That's why we sing. Absolutely. I've given my life to it. But we keep going back into the same problems because we don't look at John 4 enough. John 4, as I said, it wasn't just religious talk. It was logical, it was spiritual, it was compassionate, but it was also straightforward. Jesus said to her, stop. Go and sin no more. I've never heard of a process where we tell people, go and sin no more. Bro, like, stop sinning. And here are some tools, right? It's not just boom. And I shouldn't say I've never heard. My point is that it needs to be more. There needs to be more of that. We have to make that more of what's normal. We have to make that normative. The church has to major on these things. We have a crisis in this area. We have to major on these things. To me, this is the evangelism of the day. It is intersexual dynamics. How do we teach young men and women to get it right? And if they've already made mistakes, how to then get it right for a second or third or fourth time? How to give them hope in, not just in how to be a great church leader or a great usher or a great worship leader, how to be a man, as I said, who makes money, who is fit, who has a job, who has self-discipline. And a woman, the same thing, who's a professional, who is kind, who knows how to cook and clean. Yes, I said it. Same with men. I'm not saying only women. Who want to raise a family. Who want to, quote, submit to their husband. The S word. All these biblical things, right, that we don't even talk about in the church anymore. To challenge men to lead. Why do we have so many women in leadership? I'm not saying, again, that women should be silent, like Paul said. I mean, he did say it. My point is that why is a church so simpy where you don't have a lot of men who actually know how to lead? Or if they do step up to lead, okay, you're going to go and cook the tacos at night. you're going to usher. Then they're not leading. And the women then, quote, become more masculine in this feminist kind of view or worldview that we have. And so now the women have to put on their pants, right? Or put on the pants of the house, or wear the pants. And then the men become feminized and the women become masculinized. And now we're backwards. And now we see all the degenerate stuff that we see. And then in the church, it seeps in because the same thing happens. We have the spirit of Jezebel, right? Where you have women who have different gifts, who have different purpose, and they have a unique calling from God. Now they are over men, over the whole church, over the whole system, and it's crumbling. Or with men who are abusing their power and who are using their sexuality to damage the church and damage women. It goes both ways. We have to be conversational about this. We have to be conversational. We have to be talking about this so that me and a young person and someone older, someone younger, different colors, we can all get to the truth. And yes, we all have wisdom that comes from God. We're all seeking the same thing, to know what to do, to learn. I think discipleship in 2022 has to start with intersectional dynamics, financial dynamics, jobs, skills, how to educate yourself or start a business so that you can make the money that your wife eventually will need to trust you and be proud of you. For women, how to submit, how to compliment, whatever you want to call it, how to compliment a man, how to let the man be the man of the house, how to lead the man, how to support the man's vision. Same thing for men, right? It says that the women are to love the men as Christ loves the church. And the same thing goes for men and women. It goes both ways. But you have to have these conversations that go beyond just tough preaching and yelling and screaming to actually classes, podcasts, videos, TikToks, tools, all these kind of resources that the world, Satan is not taking a backseat to this. He's going full steam ahead with Kim Kardashian. Now she took out her bump and now has a different look, right? Because I don't know, whatever. I don't know what Kanye said or Pete Davidson or whoever, right? And that's what our women are saying. Oh, that's my G. That's my bae. That's my queen. And maybe we in the church don't say this, but it's what we're exposed to. And our young daughters or our young people are exposed to this daily from their friends at school because a public system, this is what they're doing, right? This is what it's about. It's not just about this. I'm not saying that, oh, everybody should just homeschool. But we have to speak up as a church of Jesus Christ. We have to say, hey, this is what we believe. And if we don't know what the heck we're doing, ask us older guys. And if you're an older guy and you don't know what you're doing, ask someone that does know. Younger, older. Start with the scripture. Look at intersectional dynamics. Look at evolutionary psychology. Look at the tools that are out there. This is not a new topic. This has been around for thousands of years, good and bad. Maybe you don't know any couples that are still married. They say that now a typical marriage lasts 5 years. Why would anybody want to get married if that's all that is going to happen, right? Ask those that have been married for 20 years. We've been married almost 30 years, and we're still beautiful. And happy, and we date and we go out and we make mistakes and we show grace, and we have pursued all of these different tools. I'm not saying, hey, look at me, but Paul does say, right, imitate me as I imitate Christ. But it's not just me or two people. It has to be a community, because I have a lot to learn from young people to say, okay, wow, okay, I never thought of that. Okay, that's interesting how you view what are the pressures that you have in terms of, quote, buying a house. Oh, okay, let's see. When I was your age, I made $50,000 a year, and the house costs $200,000. So it means that I could afford one. I could afford a house. Now you're making $30,000, if that, and the down payment on that house is $50,000. And the house is now worth, that same house, $1.1 million, and you're still making $30,000, and maybe you're going to go up to 45 in 5 years, because school's expensive, and because you have many people to care for, and because you don't have the education because of trauma or pain or bad decisions, whatever it may be. So we have to be conscious and aware of the things that young people deal with today. Young women that say that men are trash, or that there are no good men left in the church. I'm not talking about outside, in the church, right? Because they've dealt with addictions and trauma and sexual deviancy and promiscuity. And then the men see the same thing in the women. They're saying, well, you're sleeping around. You're no pure woman. Why would I want to be with you? You have 3, 4 kids. You've been around. Everyone knows who you are, what you do. Or, as I said, you don't see that feminine energy that people call it, right? That what they call it, pair bonding. You don't have these complementary gifts. Everyone wants to be a man now. Or everyone is so weak and feminine, right? You have a lot of young men who are hurt, who maybe are truly broken and don't know how to become a man, unless they go to and become the macho man that their parents maybe showed them. They don't know how to become an actual godly, strong man of God. They don't have any resources. They don't have any examples. Maybe they see a little bit in the church, but okay, how do you do that? That's why we need mentorship. And I'm so thankful for the places that do offer mentorship and discipleship and that take young men under their wing. That's what I do. I try to do that every day. Take young men under my wing and just share with them if they want to learn, if they want to hear. Share with them what I know. And most of all, not even just my experience, but here's what the Bible teaches. Here's how we as a family, as a couple, we have 3 college graduates, 3 amazing kids that love Jesus, that are pursuing greatness. As I said, my wife and I, the same thing. Here's what we have done It's just example A. There are many good examples. There are many bad examples, but just one of many examples. There are many people, especially I think pastors and leaders our age. It's time for us to begin to be way more conversational about this. Every pastor, every leader, every church, every man who has a healthy relationship with sexuality, with family, with their own desires, as a man who wants to, quote, spread his seed, and as a woman who wants to, quote, bag that, not fumble the bag, where we have examples of what that looks like in 2022, of men who have kept their, in their pants, and a woman who's been faithful and who has supported her husband and has raised a wonderful family and has pursued her spiritual journey as well. We need those people to speak up, to stand up, and to teach the younger generation. It's what the Bible says, right? Like the older women teach younger women, let the older men teach the younger men how they should live, and then let the old men, or let the young men, be respectful as well of the older men, older women. So there has to be this beautiful give and take, where there is a lot of love and grace and forgiveness, but also truth, guidance. It can't just be all compassion and let's just give every single mom a baby a shower for the fifth time with a fifth different guy, and we didn't even know who these men are. And yes, we should have baby showers, and we should love these young ladies, and of course the babies. But we also need to say, tell me what's going on. Tell me, are you in therapy? Do you have a social worker? Do you have a mom, a father? If not, can I be that? Can I, along with Bible study and prayer and worship and Holy Spirit and all these beautiful things and important things in Bible study, do you have someone? I'd like to be that person. And then, of course, it's up to that person. Of course, nobody can change a man. Nobody can change a woman. Nobody can make anyone do what they don't want to do. If they want to go back to their own habits, then of course they will. And this is what happens, right? We go back to our same habits. Or, as I said, we hang in there at a pure willpower until, boom, we just break. We just can't do it anymore. Something triggers us, a tragedy, someone's suicide, someone's death, someone's loss, a financial problem, or maybe your girlfriend leaves you or cheats on you, or vice versa, your boyfriend cheats, and then you just break. You just can't do this anymore because you've been doing it all on your own, white knuckling with God. But it hasn't really been a transformation of your mind, of your heart, of your soul. Romans 12 says that we had to be transformed by the renewing of our mind, how we think, how we process these things. So these are the things that I think we need to be doing, and that's why I'm here. I'm here for it. I'm here to be just one man who is like John the Baptist, just out here in the desert, just simply preparing, just screaming, saying, or just saying, prepare the way of the Lord. I'm just one man in the wilderness. And I know I'm not alone. I know there are many, 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 many people that want to also be, and that are doing it. There are more podcasts. There are more Bible studies. There are more leaders in churches and men my age and women my age that are beginning to share openly about their mistakes and also about guidance. And we need more therapists. We need more counselors. We need more mental health coaches. We need more mental health conversation, period. So that it's not just Bible study and it's not just psychology and a therapist and medication. It's both and. And at the end of the day, absolutely, it is about Jesus. But it depends on where we're at on the journey. We may be at different places. I'm just a voice that is out in the desert saying, prepare the way of the Lord. And as I said, there are many of us. You are one of them. You believe in these things. You want to be a voice to a younger generation, to your own children, to your younger brother, to other young men in the church. And so we have to come together and we have to develop a revolution of our intersexual dynamics, a revolution of marriage, relationship, dating, and family, a healing, a biblical deliverance, and a spiritual healing. And then for us older men to continue to walk the narrow path. I have men my age, pastors, who I say, yeah, this person and this place and that website and this mental game I'm playing. Please, let me talk it through. And they're like, yeah, we know Trig. Because we've known each other for 20, 30 years. And yet I can choose not to talk to those guys and just, I got it. I'm going to just pray and serve in the church and preach and lead worship. And then, boom, screw up my marriage tomorrow or next month or next year. I'm always aware. I'm not afraid. I live in freedom, but I'm always aware of the potential for destruction that is in me and in us and in all of us. And we have to be conversational about these things. The altar shouldn't be the only place where we're broken. There should be conversations here at my house, outside on the lawn, at a park, at a bench, after church, before church, where we're having these conversations so that we can turn the tide and create a new wave of holiness and of traditional values, I guess you could call it, of biblical deliverance, spiritual healing in the area of intersexual dynamics, and of the man's D, the woman's emotions, the families coming together, of single parenting, of all these issues that we see, including what do we do with all these messages that we're hearing from Cardi B and Kim Kardashian or Travis Scott or Drake or whoever, even if you're a Christian, whoever your influences are, because you don't have to be into this kind of stuff to have that influence. And plus, a lot of times it's not even from outside, it's within us. The problem is always within us, right? Our enemy, our greatest enemy is often us, ourselves. It's not always the devil. It's the flesh of the eyes, the lust of the eyes, and the pursuit of life, it says, right? So we have to be conversational with grace, without judgment, with truth, go and sin no more, so that we can turn the page. And I'm excited. I think we can do this. I think we can have a generation, my kids and their kids, that can turn the tide in this. And we can get rid of all this horrible rap, all this horrible music, all this devious attitudes and behaviors that are so normal these days in the church, outside the church, of course, so that we can be an example once again of the power of Jesus, of what Jesus can do to really restore men, women, young couples, young men and women. That's my dream. Discipleship. But it's got to be discipleship 2022. Like, I remember one of my favorite preachers, I think it was either D.L. Moody or Charles Spurgeon, who said that the way he preached every morning, or the way he got ready for Sunday preaching, was with one hand in the Bible and one in the LA Times. I think that's how we have to be. TikTok and the Bible. I don't mean that we're being influenced. I mean that we are saying, oh, that's what we're dealing with. Oh, that's what our young people are dealing with. That's why their addictions. That's why their promiscuity. That's why their brokenness. That's why they're at the altar every week. Because these are the things, and then the Bible on the other hand. And then I would say the third thing that I would add is conversation, because that middle ground is very important. How do we then, what's the process, the path to freedom? We know we need freedom. We know we're broken, but what's the path to freedom? What we call discipleship. And events and all that is fine, but I'm talking at least just my contribution. I'm just one person. As I said, I'm just a voice in the wilderness. My contribution, maybe this is just my own path, my own passion, my own contribution, as I said, is conversation, process, to be in a room, to be open, to be comfortable, talking about the very depths of our heart. Again, we have to be sensitive. We can't be inappropriate or just oversharing. We have to know men with men, women with women, obviously. We have to have all those systems and boundaries in place. But we have to, at least that's just my passion, to converse about these things so that we can find healing, so that we can find true deliverance, and we can turn the tide. And I believe we can. I am so excited. I'm also scared to death, because we need more. We need more of us. We need more voices in the wilderness saying, hey, proclaim, prepare the way of the Lord. Because the Lord is coming, and he's coming for a what? What kind of church? What's the word? It starts with H. Holy church. Unbridled. A pure bride. A holy bride. I mean, would you say that our churches are holy? I mean, we know the world isn't, but would you say that our churches are holy? I don't mean altar calling and preaching and sermons and serving the church. I mean purity in these areas. Finances, intersexual relationships, power, fame. The things that really we sin about, right? That's the thing, our 7 deadly sins. And I'm not saying, oh, let's condemn. No, I'm not saying, oh, therefore let's just all give up or let's just all go our separate ways. No, I'm just saying these are the things that Jesus himself is coming back for. So we should pursue these things. we should pursue holiness once again. Because guess what? Holiness leads to joy, peace, a beautiful marriage. I come home to my wife that loves me. She comes home to a man that loves her, that cuts the weeds in the front lawn. And today she made some amazing chicken, and she put it in a little bowl and she brought it over to me. I was watching the game. Those little things, they come from a life of love and commitment and mistakes and process and therapy and talking every day for 30 years. We posted a picture just, I think this morning I did, of our beautiful daughter who's in Italy. I miss my baby girl Isabella so much. She's studying abroad. I'm so proud of her. She'll be back at the end of the year. But before she left, she made us a homemade, her and our 3 babies. I call them babies, but they're like young adults. They made us a homemade Italian dinner with names. Canela loves to like make really fancy lettering and calligraphy. And they had a menu. David had a little tuxedo on, and so beautiful. And someone said, "You guys give me such hope of what I want my kids to do for me one day. And you're inspiring me to tell me that what I'm doing now," I think she has like little kids, it's not for nothing. That one day it'll pay off, like it's paying off for you guys. And you know what I can say? Oh, it's just luck. Oh, you know what? It is prayers, and it is a ton of commitment on the 5 of us to these things that we're talking. These are the things that we've practiced, not perfectly, not, oh, look at me, not by my chords, not, hey, I'm not selling you anything here. I have nothing to sell you. I should, so I could maybe, buy better cameras and better gear. By the way, if you want to contribute to this podcast, please go ahead and donate at davidtree.com/donate. And give a like to this, because that's actually the best donation you can give, is give a like, comment, because it helps the algorithm to get in front of more people, which helps this program get out there. And maybe I can have some brand deal with, I don't know, with Kaiser. They can sponsor us. But we have these pictures that have been, really to us, they almost are, they're just so deep. But I think people, at least some of the people that were commenting, I thank God for that. Them saying you're inspiring. All of us need to be an inspiration. All of us can be an inspiration to someone else. All of us have something that other people aspire to be. It could be the way you think, the way you talk. It could be your service, your compassion. It could be the way you look, the way you handle yourself, the car you drive, the watch you have. Oh, that's not, when I see someone that has a nice car, I'm not like, oh man, I wish I had that. I'm like, I want to learn from that man. Why? Because I want my son to know that everything is possible, including a nice car, including a nice house, including a nice watch, including a nice suit. These are things that we as men, we want, because it gives us a sense of worth, like a sense of integrity, a sense of value that the world is always taken away from men and women too, but I'm talking to the young men. My point is that we need to have examples. I don't have a fancy car, but I have a beautiful family. I don't have a mansion in Malibu, but I have a beautiful wife, 30 years, and 3 amazing kids that respect, honor, and love us, and vice versa. To me, that's my greatest accomplishment. I'm not famous in any area. I don't have a big church. I don't have a big anything, except I'm not a famous producer. I'm no one. I'm just a bass player. But what I do have as far as riches in heaven is my wife and our family. And it really has been a commitment that I saw in my parents, that I saw in my grandma that raised me, that my wife saw in her mom and dad. Her mom just passed away a year ago, and her dad, who's also dealing with some health issues, that's what she saw in them. And that's what we are now modeling our lives after. Well, that's what we did in our 20s and 30s, and now in our 40s and 50s. And guess what our kids are noticing? Guess what they're going to grow up with? Again, I'm not saying, oh, wow, look at me, or oh, wow, True, that's because you are this or you are that. No. It's been in spite of so many trials and tribulations. But I'm not here to say, oh, well, I just gave into it. I'm here to say God is able. God is good. God is faithful. You can do it too. But learn from us. Learn from those who have done it. If you want you want to have that V, right? Like some men that I see at the gym, or my son even, I used to have that V shape in my 30s and 40s. Now it's more like a big circle, like a big donut. But if you want someone's, I know it sounds funny to say someone's body, but you want to be in shape like that guy, of course you're going to go ask him. You're going to ask me. Same thing goes with anything in life, right? Hey, how did you do this? And there is no shame. And like I said, you can just ask your friends, because like all these podcasts, there are a lot of 25-year-old young people, and they're like, we don't know. We don't know what we're doing here. We don't know how to handle this. We need help ourselves. We need guidance, because we don't know. We're all young, and our parents didn't teach us, or they also made mistakes. We know what not to do. And here we are now, maybe with our third, fourth woman, fifth woman, 8 babies, and how many women have we slept with? And all of that is still there, right? No matter how many Bible verses you read, it's all there. Memories, experiences, feelings, comparison, men and women. I coach a ton of people, and these are the things that they tell me. Christians, people in the church, leaders, people that are faithful to God. These are the things that matter. And so we have to continue to be talking about these things. And that really is one of maybe the hope to have in the kingdom of God at this stage of life. I've already sang in beautiful places. I've preached to many people. I've already done, I've already reached the top. Now what I want is just to make disciples, and especially in biblical knowledge when it comes to the real stuff of relationships, love, sexuality, family, intersexual dynamics, all of this real stuff that matters. I'm not a finance expert. I'm not a business expert. I don't know how to build anything as far as a business. But what I can share that I feel that is my contribution is biblical truth, knowledge, biblical, applying the word to your life, questions that you may have. And then second is intersexual dynamics, because that's been my truth. It's been where I have grown, where I have made mistakes, and I have grown in that. And I have now the V-shaped body, not physically, but in terms of at least what I believe I have with my family, with my wife of 30 years, 27 and 2 years of dating. So 29 years to be exact, 27 of actual marriage, 2 years of dating. We didn't sleep together. We were both abstinent. We didn't sleep together until we got married, to the first night. In 30 years, I've only been with one woman. I've never cheated. I've never been I never stepped outside of my marriage. Neither has she. Our kids have seen that and have seen the stability of that. I'm not saying I'm not tempted. I'm not saying she hasn't been tempted in whatever things that she deals with. I'm not saying that we're not tempted. The Bible is clear that even Jesus was tempted but did not sin. Jesus overcame temptation. And so those are the things that I talk about. Not about being sinless or walking on clouds. But I also don't support the hiding of those real life situations where we're like, I don't want to go to that party. I can't stand, or I'm going to go because I want to see that other woman that I like, even though I'm married and whatever, a church leader. Those are the things that matter, because those are the areas where we mess up. And so these are the things that really matter to me. What's up, my brother Turk? Blessings, man, to you. God bless you, my brother. Just saw the comment there. Sorry, I haven't been checking the comments, but yeah, God bless you, my brother. Shout out to AGTG. I think that's my brother Louis, right? Yes, I believe that. Or is that Elijah? Yes, Elijah. All right. And then Water Walker and Turk, my brothers. Thank you guys for being here. That's on Instagram. And then I don't know who else is on Facebook and YouTube. I have 3 different things going here, but thank you guys for being the 1%. So yeah, like, comment. It helps the algorithm on Instagram and YouTube especially. Go to YouTube also and subscribe to my channel so that we can get this thing in front of more people. A like is the best metric for YouTube as well as Instagram to let the algorithm tell the rest of the world that this is something that you're interested in. Well, there's so much to say about this. Thank you. There's so much to say on this topic. Very, very important. And I hope that we can develop a community around this topic. I must confess, I find that most people don't like talking about this. I don't understand why. I think either they think that I am maybe like talking about something that isn't that important, that they've overcome, that they are maybe better at, or there's a lot of shame and hiding. Or maybe they, excuse me, they spiritually bypass. They go straight to the verses and the hallelujah and the praise the Lord and God's got it. And inside they're still dying. Literally, I had someone, I don't know, about 3 years ago, church leader, preacher, not the preacher, but he would also be part of the teaching team. I don't know where he came and sat next to me one day. He said, Pastor Trigg, I am literally dying inside. And you know what it was? It dealt with his family. It dealt with his ex. It dealt with intersexual dynamics, family dynamics, I guess as we call it. But I want to be more specific. It's about sexuality and how, as I said, men with our wanting to spread our seed and women with wanting that stability and wanting faithfulness from one man, monogamy, right? And yet the men want polygamy, evolutionary wise. And how do we then have discipline? Pornography, masturbation, sleeping around, your past that haunts you, your mistakes maybe, and maybe, quote, you don't deal with that, but others do. And I don't even want to say others do and you don't. We all do at different levels. As I said, spiritual bypass, I would say, is something that the men do. The women don't. The women are so honest. They're the ones in my office in tears saying, I want to leave my husband because I'm in love with this other man, or I slept with this other guy again. The men, either they go to anger or addictions, or they spiritual bypass, and they are, quote, the leaders of the church. That's where, if you want to know how men hide from these topics in the church, is find them doing it all in the church. They do everything because they are trying to somehow placate, or to hide, to use a simple word, to hide their raging temptations, sexually talking. Now, it could be other things. It could be gambling, it could be drinking, it could be drugs, it could be, but obviously women is the number one problem for all men. And so these are the things that really matter to me, because I want to see a revolution in this area. So, podcast on porn and how it's every man's battle. Yeah, exactly. There's a book called Every Man's Battle, right? Yeah. And pornography is, to me, not the issue. Pornography is a symptom of loneliness, of what some call, what do they call it? Involuntary celibacy, incel, right? The fact that 30% of men I don't know if it's married men, haven't had sex in a year, right? Sexless marriages. So to me, pornography, as important as that is, to me, I like to go underneath that, to the loneliness, to the sexless marriage, to maybe you no longer have an attraction, or back to the same idea that men are not built for polygamy, for monogamy. And that's why men want variety. And so that's why it's something, again, that women can't even comprehend, because they are natural monogamous. Because it goes back to biology of protecting that man to protect the kids and herself, right? Because as the physically weaker vessel, she wants to ensure that man is there to protect her. She can't be like sharing that man. And yet the man, he can procreate till he's 90. I mean, right? We know this. And the woman, her eggs, her ovaries, right? Those eggs begin to, I think they go down to like only 10% by the age of 35. So there's this biological clock that women know exists, even if they maybe not even are aware of it. But it informs their decisions to want to be with one man before they run out of time. Now, they may not want to have kids, they want to adopt. Maybe they just don't want to even have a family. And so you have things like pornography or addictions or drugs, alcohol, or promiscuity as symptomatic of loneliness, of depression, of rejection that so many men go through. And yet on the other side, the men that everybody wants to sleep with, the Davids, King Davids, the King Solomons, or the more good-looking or attractive or hip, cool-looking Christian dudes that everybody wants to, quote, hang out with, meaning sleep with, the lack of self-discipline. Or, as I said, the overcorrecting to be at every Bible study and to just be the perfect man of God and to fake it till you make it, right? Without truly surrendering conversation, support. And so it's both and. I'm not saying that it's not about porn or about addictions, but to me, it's always about, it's like saying promiscuity for a woman. Same thing. It's not, okay, why are you having so many baby daddies? You're a 304, right? What's wrong with you? You're a hoe, I'm sorry to say that word, but 304 is right. It's deeper than that. It's about what happened, what's going on behind the scenes. I'm not going to have a class on how not to be a 304, right? Or how not to do porn. That may sell tickets, but as we know, right, it's deeper than that. It is about loneliness, about a lack of having a father who held you, of a mother who didn't guide you, or of a father who didn't guide you, didn't teach you. I'm not saying let's blame our parents. I'm just saying these are the factors that are truly. Now, what can we do? What's the hope? What's the point, Trig? I mean, there's no solution for this. There's no answer. Yes, there is. There is healing. I mean, we believe in this, right? We believe in freedom, right? We believe in healing, spiritual deliverance, biblical deliverance. We believe in this. It's just sometimes we don't know, besides the Sunday morning or the Friday night or the Wednesday night or whatever, we don't know. We're like, why isn't this working? Why is there still so many problems? And that's just the external stuff. What about the heart? What does God see? The heart, right? He doesn't look at the externals. He doesn't care about how many sermons I preach or how many podcasts I do. He cares about, where is your heart, David? Is your heart for your wife, or is your heart for me, or is your heart for this earth and for this world? And of course our heart is for this world, right? Paul said, I do the things I don't want to do. So if Paul is in this place, if Paul was in that place of doing the very things, I mean, are we saying that we're bigger than Paul? Are we saying that we're above him? That we're like, oh, Jesus himself said, I am tempted, Lord. Pass this cup away from me. Jesus himself was tempted by Satan himself on these things that were very tempting to him: power, worship, food. So if Jesus and Paul were tempted, and Paul himself, definitely sinned, are we saying Paul was sinless? Of course not. How much more us? And Paul wrote about this. David's life is there for everybody to see. Abraham, my goodness, he got naked and drunk. Noah, the same thing. He was an incestual man. We know, of course, David. We know, of course, Solomon. We know all these. Jonah, Moses, an anger issue. He beat the rock, and God punished him. You're not going to enter the land. He punished David. You're not going to build the temple. He punished Saul. I'm going to take you away from the throne. I'm going to give it to David. So all these things that are in the Bible, of men who were honest, and including men, right? And yet I don't see that honesty with men. They, as I said, the spiritual bypass to serve, to do, to preach, to sing for Jesus. I do it too. But what I did learn these last 30 years is the value, the reason why I am where I am today is because of the path. Not because, let me tell you one thing. If there's any worth in my story, Rochelle and I and our 3 kids are not here because of Sunday morning. Let me just say it that way. We're not here because of Sunday morning. We're here because of the pathway that we're talking about here. The tools, the prayer, what happened at home between my wife and I in the car when we're arguing, when we resolve, how we resolve. When I'm like looking at someone else and she's like, hey, are you okay? Oh, with me being with my 3-4 pastor friends my age, and we were all in our 20s at one point, and beginning those conversations. And now we're in our 40s and 50s, and we continue these conversations. Me with a therapist saying, dude, I'm screwing up. I'm not where I want to be. That's why we're here. Not because of Sunday morning, not because I served in the church, not because I was a leader at 20, 30, and 40. None of that stuff. I'm not saying it didn't help or it didn't provide maybe some cocooning or maybe a place where I could be, I don't know, feel valuable perhaps. I never had a pastor say, hey man, how is your sexuality doing? How is your loneliness going? I have a worship leader friend of mine. Man, maybe one of the best I've seen. He's not like Maverick City famous, but that next level down, right? I would always poke at him. Hey, man, come on, man. Like, what's going on? Because he was single and in his 30s. I'm like, come on, man. Let's talk about porn, bro. Let's talk about women. I see you. I just mess with it, right? Same as Mark. I'm like, come on, Mark. And because I know a lot about psychology and personality, the Enneagram, I would ask him some questions, and he like, yeah, you know what he really dealt with. And again, I mean, I'm not breaking any confidence because I'm not going into his story per se or going into the details of who he is. His main issue was loneliness. Everything that he did, the struggles that he finally opened up to me about, was not about sin A, sin B, sin C. Those were the obvious things, right? Those are the things that everyone expects. And what does the church always do? Usually pray for you, give you a pill, quote unquote, the prayer pill, right? Go pray, read this verse. But behind those things, behind the tears, loneliness that came from what? Childhood stuff. Family of origin, FOO. The Foo Fighters, I call them. Family of origins, FOO. The Foo Fighters. And we're not saying blame, because his parents actually were men of God, men and great parents, great leaders in the church. But it doesn't matter, right? It's the things that he went through as a young man that made him feel inadequate, lonely. And even though this man is a graduate of an amazing university, amazing school of music, I mean, like I said, a gifted young man. Now he's not. Maybe now he's in his 30s, I think. But when I first met him, he was in his early 20s. The issues that are still there, because I still disciple him to this day. Not disciple, maybe we're now, quote, peers. They had nothing to do with not going to church or not going to or not serving or not being spiritual or not having parents even that were godly. It was his loneliness that came from some of his own stuff. This is not new, right? Every young man knows this stuff. My point is that sometimes we hide or we jump because I think that a lot of times, maybe this is just me speaking, our weapon, not our weapon, but our go-to is white knuckling it. I just hope I can do this till I die. Let me just hope I can resist temptation. Or maybe some men just are way more mature than I am. Definitely. I know there are. Or maybe they're just liars. Or maybe they're just so asleep to themselves until something goes wrong. And then they're like, oh, I didn't know that was still there. I don't think we don't know, right? Come on. We know this, that it's still there. I mean, unless I'm just such a sinner, which I am, right? And all of you guys are such holy people that maybe you need to be teaching me something. Maybe. Could be. But from my experience, 30 years of what I've seen, young people especially that I have mentored through the years to this day, these are the real things. And I'm here for it, as they say. It was the biggest battle for me forever. I've learned to control it and not fall into temptation because I would hate the feeling of always feeling God. I feel leaders are so shameful in sharing trans area. I mean, general. Yeah, exactly. Yes, thank you for the comment here. So it says here, interesting your point. May explain this since I can remember I knew my dad watched porn. And I would sneak watch them since I was like 6 years old. And when I got older, I always indulged in exactly. Podcast on porn, how it's very man's battle. Yes, all of that. So thank you, Turk, for your comment. So very, very true. There's so much there. It would be great, as I mentioned a while back, we should have like a whole panel here to share their own questions, their own process, and then to help each other out biblically, experience all the above, mentorship, discipleship. But I think if the question is controlling it and I feel leaders or struggles in this area in general, when I got older, I indulged in it. I would sneak watch. Yes, podcast. Interesting your point. Maybe explain this. I knew my dad. Yeah. So what I was saying is what's behind the scenes. So I think that, for example, what's behind the scenes, I think of this young man who I discipled recently. I had a long, good discipleship relationship with him, like a year. And he always felt insecure, even though he also had a good education and had overcome a lot of stuff. And it's because his father modeled insecurity, because he also dealt with his own addictions and his own issues. So the whole sense of my father, right? And yet God says that he will curse to the second generation, but he will bless to the third, fourth, fifth generation. So the blessings outrun the curse. So that's the hope and that's the truth, right? But how do we outrun the curse? I think it's all of this, all of what you wrote there, my dear Turk. It's the conversation with the process. This is where it began. This is where it's going. This is where it's at right now. And not everyone is maybe as analytical about these things as I am, because this is just my strength, right? This is my jam. I like to go to the corners of the person's soul if they are needing that. Not everyone is. Not everyone does. Some people are like, "Ah, I'm done with it. Boom, it's gone." And that's a gift that people have. Other people, men, women, as I said, they are more process, because they kind of, maybe they don't have the resolve to say, I'm done. I'll never drink again. They are maybe more emotional. Maybe they have more pain. Maybe they needed more than what they got. Who knows, right? Personality, nurture, nature, many factors. But this is where I do see a difference. Some people, quote, get over it. They make a decision and they're done. My wife is this way, not necessarily with this issue, but with driving a certain speed. She's like, I'm going to drive at this speed and that's it. I'm going to take the fastest way to Ralph's and that's it. She's not going to check things out and go maybe a different route just to explore, right? There are people that are more right and wrong. In the Enneagram, we call those the body types, the 8, 9s, and 1s. They call them not the achievers, but I forget what the 8s are called. The 9s are called the peacemakers. The 1s are called the rule followers, I think, something like that. I'm forgetting these names. The 8, I think, is called a control person who likes to control things and not be controlled. The 9 is a peacemaker. The 1 is the truth teller, or the right and wrong person. So these types are 9 types of people. They tend to just say, okay, I'm over it. I'm done. I don't have to deal with it anymore. The other 6 types, and there may be some of you who are those types, the other 6 are more process driven. They're in their head. They have to think about it. They're in their feelings. They have to process it through their empathy. And so you have the other 6 types. I'm not saying that those 3 don't deal with this, but they are more left brain, right brain. They're like, right, wrong. I made a decision. I'm over it. I'm no longer smoking. And people that would say, I went cold turkey and I no longer deal with alcohol or gambling or smoking. The rest of us, I'm not one of them. My wife is, and that's why we're a great match. The rest of the 6 types, there are 9 types, they're more process driven. They overthink, they overfeel. The problem with these people up here, they overdo, and so they're constantly exhausted. But as I said, when it comes to addictions or when it comes to these things, they tend to make quicker decisions and not deal with it over and over again. They may be married to someone, though, who is more of the other types. So true. About 2 years ago, I was able to be true and open. I struggled with it, and that was so freeing. I was keeping it inside. Yeah, exactly. There's nothing more healing than that's why I love AA. I was never an addict in this area per se. Porn or alcohol. I think I had other addictions. I would say my greatest addiction was fear. As ironic as that sounds, I'm not saying that women and sexuality isn't an issue for me. Of course it is. But I would say as far as my addiction, my point really was that with AA, that's what they say. I went to many AA meetings where I would bring young people that I was discipling to help them with their addictions. Bible study, but I also brought them to AA. And the first thing that I noticed in these groups is that the support of just being open, what I used to call the Me Too movement. Now that's a whole different thing. But meaning, you know what? I'm an addict too. Just in that statement, there was so much freedom. Because, as Brother Turk is saying, keeping it in secret or bottled up only makes it grow stronger. Or, as I said, you're spiritually bypassing or just hanging on, hoping that no one finds out, and most of all, hoping that you don't give into it. And then when you do, oh man, the levels of shame. And now this is now where it goes into fear, shame, and anger. The problem with those that are more left and kind of like false, true or false, is that they deal with high levels of anger. Some manage it, some hide it, some really like compress it or suppress it, but right there, anger is right there. And so the very strength, as always, right, is their very weakness. Yes, they can make a turn really quick away from evil, away from sin. But when other people don't, or when other people control them, or maybe they don't do things the way they want them, especially a husband or a wife, then anger is right there. Moses would be a perfect example, right? Show me your glory. He killed the man, but he confessed it. Jethro said, hey man, what are you doing? He changed his ways. But then what was it? He kept beating that rock out of anger and frustration with himself, with people, with God. And so he didn't enter the land. So that's what happens sometimes with those types that are very quick to let go of problems or get over things, addictions included, or pornography or temptations, is they have a lot of stored up resentment. Mostly that other people aren't doing the same thing that they do. Their wives, their kids, their husbands. Isn't God just hilarious? How his humor, right? Just when we think we got something under control, our wives struggle. Our husbands, our kids, as they get older, you're like, oh no, you're nothing like me. You're this simp, empath, feeler that wants to cry about everything. And you're like, there's your anger, right? Yeah, it's very amazing. I've been through all that, and I have such empathy for all of the different iterations of human behavior in Christ. You can't tell me anything that I haven't thought, felt, experienced, or just simply have read about or seen in my 30 years of pastoring, because it's just my gift. It's part of like they said about people like me, we are comfortable whistling in the dark. There's not, like I said, it may not be you or your friend, but it's your wife or your child. I don't counsel or disciple children. I start with college and above. But especially married couples or young couples, the man may be like, oh man, I got over that. I'm just praising the Lord now. But the wife continues to, quote, mess up, right? And so, yeah, I don't have any judgment for, I have empathy, but I also have tools. I'm not just like, okay, let me pray, brother, which I believe in. If anything, that is the answer. But as I said, 6 out of the 9 types, they need process. 3 out of the 9 types are more just boom, done. But then in God's humor, he pairs them up with a partner who's nothing like them as far as this. Or a child who's like the opposite of them. They may have one who's just like them. And I'm like, okay, thank you. But then there's just one, right? Who's analytical, who's in their feelings, blah, blah. And so that's why, to me, this is the beauty of life and what I believe I'm here for on this earth. I'm a musician, I'm a preacher, all this stuff. But really, to me, my contribution in life before I go and meet Jesus, I'm not planning on dying, but is to do this, make disciples. Everything that I do are just tools, excuses I call them, to really disciple young people in these topics. I don't mean only Bible, although as a theologian, I have an MA in theology, actually. People may not know this, but I have a master's degree in theology, and in leadership I have 2. I love the mind, I love learning, but not just for learning's sake, not to just ascend, but practical theology. Like, how do we find these kind of things in the Bible? And it's no secret, right? It's there. It's just some people, though, you know how they think and how they process life. And then the second thing is, as I said, disciple making and helping young people, especially. Why young people? Because that's where I got lost, right? We always, life is a mirror. We always are seeing, even if we don't know it, we always are seeing in others or in life or in the people we love or at work or the boss that we don't like or the wife that makes us mad or the kids that we love. We're just seeing a reflection of ourselves. So everything that I'm saying is just, I'm reflecting who I am. And maybe there's some benefit to others, but really it's just, and it's not selfishness, it's just simply all we have is truth through human personality. Is kenosis, right? Is he became nothing. He did not hang on to his divinity, his power, his oneness with God as something to be held on to. Instead, he became nothing to the point of death on the cross. And that's what we do, right? We are one with God. We are divine nature, the imago Dei. We're not gods, we're not Jesus, but we are Christ-like. We are one with God. We're seated in the heavenly place in Colossians 3. But then we are also in this human flesh. And so that's the beauty of at least what I call discipleship. It's that process of And then what happens on the other side? We go back to eternity, right? It says in the Bible, in that same verse in Hebrews 11, that he endured the cross for the joy set before him. Philippians 2, that beautiful hymn there, it says that and because he endured the cross to the point of death on the cross, then God exalted him. So on the other side of our disciple making is glory, is eternity, is oneness with God once again, is returning back to Eden. So this is not the end. So we're not going to figure it all out here on earth. That's what I always tell myself and others. We're just on our way to heaven. We're just dimly seeing with a what's that hymn, with a dimly lit eyes, what once we will see with clear and open, unveiled eyes. So we're just doing our best to see Christ and to see ourselves in light of Jesus. And I have so much hope, so much love. Good night, brother. Yep, good night. I have so much hope, so much peace for the future. Okay, I'm going to go too. Thank you, guys. Thank you to Virginia. Thank you to Turk. Thank you to Water Walker. Thank you to all the people to Josh Jones, my brother Josh Jones, to Elijah, to Joseph Carrillo, brother Eric, to Victorious Records, and then to anyone also on Facebook, on Twitch, on YouTube. Thank you again, and I will see you next time. Okay, adios.